This is the March 28th, 2023 meeting of the County Commissioners. Is there a motion on the Clerk General?
So moved? Yes.
Yes. And on the requisitions?
I just have one question, and that's about the sewer system matter. That's a regular service, or what is that?
Let me see, which one, Tom?
It's the first one.
The Hunter Sewer
Yeah.
Improvement, yes, that was a bid, that was a project that we bid out.
Okay.
The award bid is in the packet for today, is that correct, Crystal? Yes, so this was a regular, it was an upgrade to the sewer system improvements in the Hunter area.
Okay.
And it was a formal bid project.
All right, so I'll move to accept the requisition.
And yes?
Yes. Okay, it's 9 o'clock then. We have an administrative hearing for the Green Meadows PUD Stage 2 in Franklin Township. For the record, would the board's clerk please read into the record both what documents have been filed in this matter and how and when notice of the hearing was given?
We've received the Regional Planning Commission staff report along with recommendations from various departments and agencies. The Regional Planning Commission presentation for today. The administrative hearing was advertised in the Today's Pulse newspaper on March 12th, 2023. Notices were sent to the property owner, adjacent property owner, and the township trustees on March 2nd, 2023.
Great. So at this time, I'd like to ask anybody who intends to testify on this matter to please stand if you're able and raise your right hand, and I'll administer the oath to you all at one time. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under oath to tell the truth? If so, answer, I do. Great, thank you. We'll ask you just to confirm that when you come up. Next, we will hear from RPC. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Ryan Cook, and I'll be presenting the Green Meadows PUD Stage 2. So looking at the subdivision review process, PUD Stage 1 was approved back in July 20th of 2001. RPC recommended approval of the PUD Stage 2 back in February, and here before us we have the Board of County Commissioners here. So looking at the project overview, the property owner is Wilson Farms Development 2 LLC and Green Properties LLC. Surveyor and engineer is Bayer Becker. Site location is off of Robinson Vale Road. Site area is 87.67 acres. They're proposing 220 single-family residential lots and 9 open space lots. And the zoning on the property is R3 Plan Unit Development. Here's a vicinity map showing the location of the site. It's located east of Robinson Vale, north of State Route 122. Here's an aerial of the site showing the existing conditions. This is an extension of the existing Wilson Farms subdivision to the south. Here's a closer look at what the proposed plan is. And the, again, showing 220 single-family lots, 28.38 acres of open space, a few stormwater management ponds as illustrated. There is a natural path located along the north end of the site as well as the south end, and an 8-foot asphalt path that goes towards the center of the site, leading to the centrally located park. There are sidewalks proposed on both sides of the development.
What is the zoning on this? This is,
R3 PUD.
so it's a PUD, and you're allowed 3 units per acre?
It's allowed for, I'm not sure the exact density, it's around 2.5 dwelling units per acre, but that was approved, as mentioned, back in 2001. It more or less mirrors what the existing Wilson Farms development was prior to the comprehensive rezoning that was done back in 2012.
Gross.
Let me interject here. You keep saying 2001. You mean 2021?
21, yes.
Okay. Just clarify that for the record, please.
But this zoning was put in place,
By this Board of County Commissioners allows up to 220 units on this particular phase of the development,
and did that in 21?
21.
Because this was part of that overlay, is it, where did we do 2.5 units an acre? That's,
You have to ask Ryan, I don't recall.
You said, when did we do it?
yeah, there was only very specific places I thought we did that.
So, yeah, more or less, under the existing Wilson Farms, it matched basically what the existing approved plan was, but there was, like I said, back in 2012, it was rezoned comprehensively back to a different zoning district, but this more or less was a mirror of the existing development to the south.
So I'm a little confused. So 2001, you've said 3 dates there, 2001, 2012, and 2021. Can I get an understanding of what was done when?
The 2012 was the comprehensive rezoning that the county did. To more or less, it was done under the cluster development to the south, to the north. Then in 2021 was the rezoning to more or less have the same, if not similar density, to what was previously approved under the cluster development design.
All right, so the action that was last taken by us was in July 2021.
Correct.
And prior to that, to answer Dave's question, there was a cluster zoning that approves this level of density in what year?
I believe it was prior to 2012.
Okay. Thank you.
They are showing a conservation area along the north and eastern portions of the site, as well as a submitted landscaping plan showing the street trees and trees along Robinsonville Road. Shown here is the proposed cross-sections of a collector road running north and south, as well as east and west of the site, shown in blue, and the local roads shown in black. And here's the existing zoning map showing the R3 PUD. And here are those development standards for the site. There is a streamside setback located along the south end of the site. So with that, we are recommending approval subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. I can go through just a few of those. So number 1 is a standard condition. Number 2, compliance with the requirements of the Warren County Engineers Office and the Ohio Department of Transportation. And any road improvements deemed necessary by either department shall be installed by the developer. Water and wastewater facilities shall comply with the Warren County Water and Sewer Department standards, and any improvements deemed necessary by the Warren County Water and Sewer Department shall be installed by the developer. Compliance with the Warren County Soil and Water Conservation District. The proposed stormwater detention system and devices shall be designed and constructed in accordance with the Warren County Engineers Office. Homeowners Association shall be established for the management and maintenance of the common open space, and all amenities of the community shall be completed before the plating of the 166th residential lot. Entry monument signs shall be similar to what was illustrated on the title page.
So they don't have to do all of the things they're promising to do until 166 homes are
So what happened with the existing Wilson Farms is the trail network. We want to make sure that that is completed before the plating of those lots. So the mulch trails and the pathways that they're proposing, we wanted to put some condition in there to guarantee that those would be completed before the development was complete. Also to submit an updated Stage 2 plan that identifies the materials of the natural path, updates the project data numbers for the correct parcel IDs, and then also change the subdivision name and the proposed name Arthur that is acceptable to RPC as well as the engineer's office, and then compliance with all other state and local federal regulations. But that concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Other questions?
Bruce, do we have, what is, I mean, this is a PUD, so obviously it's negotiated, but they're basically taking it all the way up to the maximum allowance of lots in here. I mean, do we have any discretion?
You don't have discretion as you're inquiring. In your packet, there are the factors that you can consider that are in the zoning code. Right here's, I'm looking at the wrong paper. So under 1.303.6, there's a number of factors that you can rely on to require the PUD Stage 2 to comply with something, but it has to be based on one of those factors.
Those factors are also in the back of your script that's on your desk. The last few pages.
Is this a fairly rural area, or is this high density all around it?
Let me go back to the aerial. So there is an existing, like I said, subdivision to the south, but a lot of it's.
How about the satellite view, the one before that? There. So it's fairly rural except to the direct south?
Correct.
Has there been like a traffic impact on Robinsonville Road?
Yes, I believe that there's turn lanes, left turn lanes, if you're coming southbound, required by the traffic impact analysis. Maybe the applicant can speak on that behalf.
That was a condition of the Stage 1 approval.
Who is the applicant? The applicant here? Okay. Well, before we have you come up, my question for you is, do you have any cross-examination questions of this witness that you'd like to ask him? Great, thank you. Why don't, we can come back to this as the board's continuing to review, but why don't you come on up and state your name and address for the record, please, and present your case.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I'm John Delver, and I'm with Bear Becker, 6900 Tylersville Road, Mason, Ohio 45040. I have been sworn in. With me is Rob Smith with D.R. Horton and Clint Oliver with Bear Becker as well. The plan before you is largely similar to the plan that we submitted as part of the Stage 1 application that was approved in 2021. Same number of units, 220 units. The only thing we did was we made some small adjustments to account for more detailed design that we've done since July of 2021, but otherwise it's same roadway network, same number of lots, same size lots. As far as staff's report, we concur with staff's comments, so we don't have any further comment with regards to that, and we're here to answer any questions. Happy to talk about TIS. Happy to also talk about the history of the project, if that would be helpful.
You should share anything you want to share with the board.
All right, well, I will address the TIS. TIS was submitted as part of the stage one. It has been approved by the Warren County Engineer's Office. What the recommendation was on Robinson Vale Road, southbound, left turn into the development. So that's what we're working towards. And that is shown, I know it's small on the, on a 100 scale plan, but the improvement is shown on the stage 2 plan. As far as history, there was a little bit of discussion about this. This project, maybe not Green Tree Meadows, but this particular piece of land goes back to, I want to say 2004, where it was called the Wilson Farm Addition. I think it was a preliminary plat that was approved, I believe, in 2004. That has been developed, as you can see. Well, quite honestly, there's the 2004 plan. It looks pretty much the same. Can I leave the microphone just for a second?
Take it with you.
Yeah, perfect, thank you. So, Wilson Farm, but actually this was a 2-page plan. You can see that we basically, what we're here today, the stage 2 plan is really this line north. There was another page that had other lots that have already been developed. So you're largely, this is Jenny Marie, it's largely developed their homes here. And then this Wilson Farm Boulevard is stubbed to the property line here. And so it stops here, what's been developed. So in 2004, we had this plan. It was prepared and approved under the old cluster development guidelines, which no longer are in effect. This was about the remaining number of lots from basically this heavy line north. On this plan was 208. We were approved for 220 lots in 2021.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is the subdivision to the south that you just see barely cut off, is that the same developer?
No, it is not the same developer as today.
Okay, is it developed under the same density?
I don't recall what the density was of the Wilson Farm off the top of my head overall. Wilson Farm extends all the way to the south to 122. There were 2 developers. It came so far north with one developer, then it was extended with what I called the addition plan.
So the farm was split up and it had separate parcels, sold to different developers, developed at a different period of time. Is that
Yeah.
right?
We had that transition in 2008, 9, right, where,
Yep, there was a big financial crisis back
Yes.
then. But all I wanted to know was, if we were to see what was in the south, is that, do you believe, a consistent density with what you're doing to the north?
I believe so, consistent lot size.
Okay, that's
I
all
would
I'm
definitely-
asking.
yeah.
Thank you.
So you would say this fits in with the appearance and design character with all corresponding surrounding and existing developments, even though there's one?
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to just go, this is the current plan. Yeah, these are 60, so all the lots on this part are all 61 feet in width as minimum. I think the immediately adjacent, Clint, were we 55s? So, but there was a mix of development, mix of lot sizes, but I think the immediate area,
There's not a big mix of lot size if you're putting in the absolute maximum number of lots into this space. There's not exactly a big mix of lot size.
there's only one lot size proposed in this
Okay,
application.
so it's not.
61.
So there's not a lot of mix of lot sizes?
No, they're all-
Okay.
they're all the same.
You've done the bare minimum to fit in the absolute maximum number of lots?
We are,
Yes.
what's been approved?
You're under oath, right? Yes.
Yeah,
Is
what's
the
been
answer.
approved.
So,
Do you accept all the conditions set forth by the Regional Planning Commission?
Yes, we do.
And so there was, I don't see it here exactly, but there's a requirement that at the time you complete the project, you'll have done certain paths and things like that, is that right?
Yeah.
And the timing of that is that those paths and things don't have to be completed until the entire subdivision is built out?
I think
that what
that's
it says?
I think it's a-
166th lot.
Yeah,
106,
which
so
is
there's
75% of the development.
75%, then you have to put in all the paths, is that right?
Let me read the.
Somebody out there is
All of
shaking
the
their head,
all of
yes.
the
And they're
amenities.
probably under oath too. But, so I take it that,
It says all the amenities, yeah. then
because
would-
I know that we've previously had people come in from HOAs that didn't like the fact that their paths weren't completed, you know, when they hoped they would be. And the developer, of course, comes in and says, oh, but we didn't have to do it until almost everything was built out. In one case that we had, it was like they had to build out practically every lot, but they had different phases, like you have different phases here?
Yes, we do. We have 4 phases.
Okay, and so, is there a real big expense to doing the paths and things like that, so you wouldn't wanna do, or there's no reason for them until it's built out more?
Well, yeah, I mean, so we have the roadway network and roadside sidewalks, I'll call them.
Yeah.
Developed, I would think it would make sense to develop all of the paths, but Robin, you can correct me if I'm wrong as a developer, but our intention, I think, as we build the phase, we build the path in that phase.
Yeah, so that makes sense to me, is if the path is something that, I mean, does the path just for this subdivision, or does it connect ultimately to some other paths outside this
And
subdivision?
it does not connect to a path outside there. I don't think there are any paths to connect to, but it's
Okay.
just internal.
Well, that makes sense to me. So then it would make sense to me that you would build the paths as you're developing that particular area. Is that what you're anticipating? But that's not actually what this says. This says, in effect, that you don't have to build any path at all until you get to that magic number, right?
I guess if you call the path amenity, I guess that would be true, but that's not really our intent. I would build
Well, I
the
was
paths
wondering
as you
then,
go.
okay, so my question then is why this wouldn't have, the condition wouldn't have been written that you would do the paths at the time you're doing that particular phase? Is there a reason
Yeah.
why you wouldn't want to do that?
I don't believe so,
Okay.
yeah.
You said something about the history. Can you refresh my memory of July of 2021? So this was zoned 87.67 acres, single family, 1 acre density. And then this board rezoned it? Bruce, do you remember? I mean, I am just, for R1B
Because there
and
was
what?
an overlay, right? There was it was zoned, it was previously zoned and a zoning classification that no longer exists, correct? There was something about how that land had been zoned, but that zoning classification didn't exist, is my recollection.
Yeah, can you refresh, I mean, this is literally everything I am philosophically opposed to, and I can't believe I participated in downzoning from 1 acre lots to quarter acre lots. Please refresh my
Yeah,
memory of why that happened.
We had this conversation, yeah. We brought this
So
plan.
did I ask this in 20, I'm getting older now, I don't remember all these things.
I'm sure it's many cases ago. Yeah, no, the plan, one of the reasons we brought the plan back, like I said, the original plan was prepared in 2004. There were elements in that plan that, for us, we needed to change the plan. It just didn't meet current standards, even from an engineering standpoint. So we knew the only way we could come back, since the cluster development regulations were not enforced anymore, was come back through a PUD to get a very similar, our goal was to get a very similar.
So the
plan.
timeline, so I understand it, so there's a 2004 approval back under old cluster development that had 200-plus homes. We do a zoning change, and all of a sudden, we're saying it's 1 acre density,
Okay.
right, at some point?
It was an R1 or R1B, I can't remember exactly what. the
Which,
density
that's what this resolution says, it was 1 acre density.
Okay.
And then at some point, we decided since it was approved, is that what happened, Bruce? So it was approved back in 2004, we can't really hold them to the 1 acre density, and so we approved changing this?
I don't recall your rationale. All I know is you adopted a resolution. It was 3-0 vote to approve the rezoning.
And that was in what year?
2021.
I think the,
Well, I know that's in 2021, but I'm talking about when, because my original question on that very issue was that something happened in 2012, I thought. Am I wrong?
I don't know about 2000.
Yeah, the comprehensive rezoning took place in 2012, and maybe, well, you can testify,
Stan, will you,
Stan,
yeah,
one at a
Stan, will
time.
will you tell me what's going on here? Since you were actually here?
Good morning. In 2000.
Stan, could you state your name for the
Good morning,
record, please?
Stan Williams, RPC, Abbotsford.
Thank you.
In 2012, the zoning had changed from cluster to a lower density, 1 unit per acre. But prior to that, the applicant had an approved preliminary plan for 208 remaining lots. So regardless, they could do those 208 lots. Okay, and then they came in 2021 for a rezoning to a PUD to do something very, very similar to what they had already been able to do.
And the trade-off, as I recall from that case, was something around, like, the frontage was better.
And the access circulation was better.
Yeah, so like I'm remembering this case now because we had a robust discussion around the density here, but that this was already approved for 208 lots.
Correct.
And so the question really before us was whether or not to allow them to do this additional 12 lots
Or redesign those.
for the redesign in exchange for some things that we viewed at the time as being in totality more favorable.
Correct.
Because that 208 lots were already approved. Even though the zoning was changed, that was an approved piece.
Correct.
So they could have built the 208 as designed, or we could have allowed them to update it, and that's what we were considering. I remember this pretty distinctly because
Yes. So even if you had turned down the rezoning.
They still could
They could do
still
208
Correct.
prior to us.
Correct,
Was
yes.
what it was, because the
Correct, yes.
plat was approved. No
Correct.
matter what we did with zoning subsequent to that, they had a piece of paper saying we
Correct.
could do 208 lots.
And there was something, I'm not meaning to put you on the spot because I can't barely remember about 2021, but I remember something around the frontage, like the frontage, the way that they were redesigning the plat was more favorable. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
It went from, I think, 55, what was approved previously, to 61. So the lots became bigger.
Yeah.
Actually, the base zoning allowed, the base zoning for the PUD allowed 4 units per acre. They were only asking for 2.5 units per acre. And the PUD resolution capped it at 220, not just leaving it open to the base zoning density.
Okay.
And that cluster category, allowance was predated me, which is, that's why I never approved, would have ever approved anything based on that zoning, and that's where I'm trying to get a recollection. How in the world was I, and I appreciate my much younger and wiser colleague that remembers these things better than I do.
Well, barely, but I'm just looking at this now, and it'll come back to you too, Dave, I think, since I think we're the same age, or pretty close, but I'll take younger. There was a redesign of the road network, and they were relocating the stub streets. Wasn't that was part of it too? And reconfigured the open space to be more conducive, like it was more prominent open space as opposed to, it was more scattered through in the previous design. This was providing more park-like open space. Yeah, I just remember this because it was so, none of us were here back in 2004, obviously, and it was kind of a quagmire around, they're gonna build it. Do we take the opportunity to make it better with better transportation, roadway infrastructure, better in and out, access for traffic? Or do we deny it and we end up with a nearly 20-year dated design where things have changed dramatically?
Could you have Mr. Williams address the road network system through the subdivision while he's there, in anticipation that that may become a point of discussion
Yeah.
during this hearing?
That'd be great.
In the redesign, in the previous design, and even in the thoroughfare plans, in the previous design and the thoroughfare plan,
You have to hold it up to your mouth, Sam.
Coastal Farms Boulevard was supposed to have been the collector road. The new plan changes that to Madison Raceway, so it's not as a direct route, and the applicant was concerned about cut-through traffic. So I think this redesign helps with that.
So in other words, it shunts the traffic on the blue lines, is that what you're saying?
Correct, yes.
And that's preferred by us and the developer?
And the engineer's office.
Okay, thank you. And so that's the big improvement that's been made?
That's one of the improvements that have been made.
All right.
Rather than, yeah.
But the bottom line is that back in 2004, the basic density was set, and we're obligated to honor it. And we did, and we allowed a change, a relatively slight change percentage-wise of homes in 2021 to get a better design. And at that time, I don't recall anybody from the public objecting to this density or to this design plan. I don't recall that. And certainly, there's no reasons that I've heard yet today, but we're gonna have anybody else speak to this as to why this shouldn't be accepted. And is the change, is there a change between 2021, when we accepted the plans that were submitted to us then, and today? Is there a change?
Very minor changes. There are some changes, and I can run you through that if you'd like.
Well, tell me what it's about. If it's minor changes, what are the type of changes we're talking about?
Jenny Marie Drive, which is the western north-south road, we had to pull that road away from lot 2, I think it's 223 or 235, where the open space is. We need to make that detention basin larger in the final analysis.
Okay.
So we had some room. We moved the road over. We had lots along the eastern north-south collector road, along the west side of that road. We had lots that fronted onto that road, those corner lots. We had like probably 3 lots, where now you can see we've rotated them, and we only have 2 lots along that edge, and none of them front along the collector road anymore. So just those minor changes really.
Okay, that's what I want. I wanted to know whether there was a big difference between what we approved in 2021 and today, and there's not. All right, thank you.
So do you have anything else you'd like to add before we continue on?
I do not.
Great, thank you. Okay, so is there anyone here who would like to testify as a proponent in support of the PUD Stage 2 preliminary site plan? Seeing none, Is there anyone who wants to testify as an opponent to the PUD Stage 2 preliminary site plan? Come forward, please. And please state your name and address for the record.
Hi,
And
my
you-
name's Taylor Rhodes. I'm a resident of Wilson Farms today.
Okay.
I should be clear, I suppose, that while I stated testifying as an opponent, I'm not opposed to the plan outright. However, I have some clear concerns that I'd like to outline with you, and I've prepared a presentation to that effect.
And you've been sworn in, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Perfect, thank you so much. So, as I said, I'm a resident of Wilson Farms. I've lived here for almost 6 years now, but I grew up in this region, so the move from Warren to Warren from Montgomery County was not a far stretch for me. But I want to talk to you about traffic calming. So you saw some of the maps, and specifically in the first presentation, I think where they showed the initial development. And Wilson Farms, and I have some pictures that I'll show you in here too. It is a very straight shot, but it's also a very wide road. And I think originally, if you go back to some of the historic master plans for the county, I think that was supposed to be potentially a larger thoroughfare, but it didn't develop that way. But the road itself is quite wide. So just to go through, I have a quick agenda. So I'm going to go through an introduction and some of our concerns. I did a resident survey, so over the years I've talked with probably 50 other families, but in purposes of this survey, I've accounted for about 36 different families that I've spoken with within our subdivision. Speeding and safety is a major concern, as well as the connected road, and I'll go through why we feel that's an impact. And I have some speed study data provided by county engineering that I'd like to go through with you. So we've seen, as I said, excessive speeding on this road, Wilson Farms, which is proposed to connect to, I think, Madison Grace was what was just stated as part of the adjustment to the plan here. In 2019, working with engineering, they agreed to run a speed study. They did that on the straight shot of Wilson Farms. An issue exists. I'll show you how that is. We're concerned about the impact, and there's a need for some traffic calming solution before we, as residents, would feel comfortable with this plan to extend the existing subdivision and have a connected road, and I'll show you why. So some of the concerns we've had, these are from a collection of over 30 different families. So I've had safety concerns as a driver when those who are speeding or impatient with me, maintaining the speed limit as a pedestrian going outside to retrieve mail, or observing my kids outside playing or en route to our house from the bus stop. There are many kids in our subdivision, although including mine, and although they've been taught about safety when outside playing, kids are not always the most attentive when focused on playing with their friends. We should demand more accountability from drivers traversing the subdivision roads, and if possible, introduce deterrents like sheet canes or inconveniently wide speed bumps. I agree with that. I'm completely against the connecting road. This is one resident's view. This is not my view, okay? But one resident is completely against the connecting road. As soon as they open it, it will become a cut-through for this area. If you think speeding is bad now, wait until they open the area up, and the worst kid is all the kids in the neighborhood. I really hope there are never any injuries. You can see this goes on and on. I invite you to take a look at this. One resident has lived here 16 years. The speeding and its frequency just continues to increase, and I can demonstrate that with some data here. So there is an issue driving 25 miles an hour. This is these are two images here of Wilson Farms, just to show you the width of the street. It's extraordinarily wide, but this is what it encourages. So over the last 10 years, there's been an evolution in design thinking around roads specifically, right? You design the road so that it suits the speed you want people to drive. People are not going to drive the posted limit if it feels comfortable to speed. It's just human nature. So if you have a very wide road, people are going to traverse it quickly. Here are two videos, and this is what often happens. This is not at all unusual. If I can get this is also there's a car traveling along the side. if you had a small child, this would be concerning to you, especially if they were outside playing in the front yard. The speed study data is pretty illuminating. You can see most of it happens as you would expect with rush hour, but most of it is concentrated in the morning. In this distribution, I'm sorry, but the southbound, that is out of the neighborhood. There's only one in and out right now, right? So it's mostly residents. It's mostly our other neighbors that are doing this, right? And if you look at between 6 to 9 a.m., you have the most frequency of speeders at that time. So this is summing the frequency of observations of people going from 31 to 35, 36 to 40 miles an hour, and 41 to 45. But just to put that into perspective for you, over a 2-week period where they did the speed study, there were 1,109 instances of people going between 31 and 35, 240 instances of people going between 36 and 40, and 34 instances of people going 41 to 45 into 25. And in the evenings, yes, it's a little better. People maybe are not as pressed coming home from work as they are going to work, I guess, is my supposition to why that's true. But you can still see, even so, 640, 7 instances of 31 to 35, 80 instances of 36 to 40, and 4 instances of 41 to 45 into 25. So the 85th percentile speed for the southbound traffic is 33 miles per hour, and the 95th percentile is 36, and for northbound, the 85th percentile is 30 miles an hour, and the 95th is 34. And here, I can provide you copies, of course, of the engineer's report, but there they are, that just summarize it. So what am I asking for, and why am I here today? We don't fully oppose, at least most of us don't fully oppose connecting the road to Robinson Vale. However, the situation with our current street is untenable. I've spoken and have a good relationship with Major Brian Tench of Warren County Sheriff's Office. He is in charge of road enforcement and has on numerous occasions, a favor to me, agreed to come out and run enforcement. That helps for some time, but it's not a prolonged effect. In speaking with him, could we do, there's a notion called a road diet where they purposely constrict portions of the road. You're probably familiar with these long kind of speed bumps, right? They're called speed tables. And so it's designed so that an emergency vehicle traveling quickly over it can still go through there without incurring the kind of damage that you're going to incur if you go in a small speed bump and hit it quickly. A proper method of traffic control specifically around Robinson Vale and 122, this is going to back up, right? And people are going to use this neighborhood. I would do the same thing. If I were a reasonable average person, I would travel through our neighborhood once they constructed the street. This would be faster, right, than going through and waiting on the traffic on Robinson Vale. That's what people will do if they don't fix that intersection. There are lots of options. US DOT has lots of options for controlling residential traffic flow and making it more manageable, right? And here they're using, this is a sheet pane, right? And they've added some features here, but it's constricting the road itself. Speed tables, even a roundabout, right? You don't want to put a stop sign because it impedes the flow of emergency traffic, but a roundabout doesn't have that same effect. So if they can ensure that we could do some revisions to the existing road that is there today, then we'd be very happy to support this plan. But right now, there's just too much reckless driving that's occurring. Speeding can't be mitigated. We've tried. I've been working on this since 2019. Believe me, my last thing I wanted to do was appear here and make us think about this. I really don't want to do that. I want us to grow as a county. I think that's important. Growth is what drives our future. So I don't want to stand in the way of progress because at the end of the day, that's what we all want to see is growth. But it's got to be done in a way that's safe for everyone. We just can't guarantee safety. Just this week, we had a sideswipe incident of a parked car on Wilson Farms. Hit and run. They left. Don't know who did it. But unfortunately, we think this is going to amplify the existing problems, especially as more traffic gets built. This study, by the way, was conducted in 2019. We've added over 100 additional units to the neighborhood since then. And just to show you the image, right? So this poor traffic flow here, this is a poor intersection Major Tench agrees. There are a lot of accidents here, but poor traffic flow here will incentivize a shortcut here. Do you have any questions that I can answer for anyone?
Did you come here in 2021 when we addressed this plan?
No, I did not.
But you have been working on it since 2019?
Yes, and I'm gonna be completely transparent. I was not aware of the meeting that occurred until after the fact that it had occurred in 2021.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Well, and I know sometimes they don't give very good notice, like they're not sending you a letter to your house or something like that. They do it through
I
publication.
found it
and
afterward.
things
It
like
was
that.
really,
Yeah,
I was sorry
so I
that
can
happened.
understand that. So if you go back, that was helpful, because I wanted to see that previous, no, you're going way too far.
Sorry, okay,
You showed the housing that is in the subdivision you live in with the current street.
Mhm.
So that's the one. So that is, the development that we're talking about today is just to the north of that, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
There in the corner.
And what you're asking for is improvements on the
existing
current
road.
street.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with this development.
And other than the fact that it is going to be connected through,
No,
and so you're gonna
but
create
it's
a
not,
connection.
the developer that is before us today is not the developer of these areas. And is this a public dedicated street?
It is a public road.
Okay. And the responsible party for maintaining that road is the county or the township?
Presumably be Franklin Township, but I
Well-
know there's no budget. I know that for quite a fact. There's no budget to do
Well,
anything about
is
it.
it the township or the county?
Township.
Okay. And you've previously approached the township because you previously wanted them to do something, because obviously you were asking about it in 2019.
We did get a radar speed sign. I wish it was
Okay.
more helpful, but people just like to see it flash, I think.
Okay, so in other words, there's been attempts, I mean, as you might imagine, this is a very common issue. And I was on Mason Council for 11 years, and we had this issue come up repeatedly. So it's not just your street, it's practically every subdivision has this problem.
Don't disagree with you.
Particularly with the ones where people are coming and going to, in and out of their subdivision, and they try all sorts of different things. It sounds like they've been doing that in your subdivision already.
To a degree, we don't, I wish there was a better budget to make improvements. We'd need a huge CapEx to make the kinds of changes you need to really constrict the street and force people to slow down. Because the only way you make them drive slower is the design of the road, right? If you have a 40-foot wide street as we do, then it's very easy to,
Well, I'm sure that they put that street in with the width they did because somebody previously in planning decided that they wanted it that way.
I'm sure that's the case.
It's not because the developer wanted it that way. Typically, they don't want to put in really wide streets and big boulevards because of the fact that it costs more money.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what you're asking for is a change to the street in your area, which this developer doesn't have any control over.
However, I suppose my concern is that in connecting the roads physically, right? So this is what I'm getting at, right? Is if you put a connecting road that allows you to circumvent the existing intersection at Robinson Vale, people would use that, right? As a way, it makes sense. You cut through traffic. So traffic in the morning at this little green dot down here, I don't know if you can see my cursor here. Traffic easily backs up trying to turn left and right because the intersection is very poorly planned. Quiet farm, so people will cut through here to get around it. If I'm having problems now in 1,000 instances of people going over 30 over a 2-week period, just imagine what that's going to be once you connect the road and allow any traffic to cut through. You could put signs to say like no through traffic, but that's not going to be effective.
So what you're saying is that the yellow lines are the main thoroughfare areas, is that right?
I think that, yeah, so this.
And you're
is
saying that there's a
probably-
constriction on that one yellow line that your arrow is on now, which would make some people who are, quote, knowledgeable to maybe, once there's a connection that's planned through the current subdivision, that they would come through yours to avoid that yellow area. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's your point? That's the point.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and what is the constriction on the yellow line?
Well, you have like an off-centered intersection of an IGA there, so people are trying to go like kind of straight but kind of right, and then it's traffic on 122, so that's grown more and more. It will continue to become more, especially now that Middletown is planning this additional development. You probably saw in the Journal News the other day. So the traffic flow on 122 is going to become even more immense, and so people are going to have an even harder time, especially turning left. There's no turn lane, it's just a two-lane road. It takes quite a lot of time to get out of there, especially at rush hour.
They putting a turn lane in? I thought that was one of the things that turn lane was going in.
Okay. Well, I don't have any
Yeah, it's a
further
double-edged
questions.
sword. Number one, are you a traffic engineer?
No, I should be, right?
Yeah. But what type of engineer are you?
No, I'm not, but I work in textiles, actually. But I think just my critical mind is interested in these kind of issues.
Yeah, because the speed bumps, we've talked to the county engineer about the speed bumps multiple times in the past through subdivisions. They hate them.
Yeah, they're very opposed.
Plowing, roads, things like that, safety, I mean, they absolutely hate them. There's more downside to upside to
Yep.
doing them. As much as I was negative before about everything in this plan, the flip side of this is we've had a philosophical approach of trying to connect connector roads inside of subdivisions forever, simply because there's a public safety aspect of that.
Yeah, of course.
With emergency services actually having multiple routes into a subdivision, which makes all the residents safer when you can get in or out multiple
Yeah,
ways.
I don't
if there's
disagree with
problem.
you at all. I think that is the proper thing to do. It's just how do you do it and dissuade people from wanting to travel at 40 miles
Correct,
an
and that's,
hour?
and to Commissioner Grossman's point, clearly in the new road, it will not be as wide and as inviting, as you say, and I was at a home builder symposium probably 15 years ago where there was a design guy there that said, we're killing kids in our subdivisions, by having these, literally, I thought that was a little over the top, but I thought, well, maybe there's some truth to these wide, super, encouraging lanes, as you said, hey, I can fly through here, no big deal. As opposed to the narrow streets that, wait, you gotta look out for where you're going, but then all of a sudden you get people parking on the streets and it's super narrow and the kid loses the ball and all of a sudden in 1 second, kid goes from no kid to a kid standing in front of you when you're coming through, when it's super narrow. So I mean, nothing is perfect.
We've had so many near misses that I think, and every time it happens, of course, like I hear about the near miss, and I really don't want to see a day where that near miss becomes something actual, because there's nothing worse than losing a child. So that's what we're trying to prevent. I think as neighbors, I've worked with engineering, I've worked with the sheriff's office, by the way, they're really great. So if you see those guys, please give them praise, because the Major Attention, his team, they've been really awesome, I have to say, really great guys. But I'm at my wit's end for what our next options are, as opposed to, we can sit here and say we oppose this connection, please don't do this, because the traffic situation is still very bad. But I don't know how else to compel someone to do something to change the road so that people slow down. That's all I want, and, I plead with my neighbors. A lot of us do slow down. I don't drive fast through there, but I don't drive fast in general. But some people do. And
Yeah, I mean, we've seen HOAs solicit and actually accept assessments on their properties to change roadway things of, hey, this is so bad, okay, our HOA is doing this, and then there's an assessment that's overlaid to provide the funds, and then the engineering office will go and do a project. But like Commissioner Grossman said, I'm not sure what, this developer can't do something on a development that's been in place for more than a decade, can't ask him to go and prove, because there's no direct correlation of, turn lanes in and out of this subdivision on feeder roads, 100% we can do things along those lines. But just because it happens to be connecting to another public road, you've got to improve that public road. It's just, that's a stretch.
other questions? Does the applicant have any cross-examination questions for this witness?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, just a minute, please. So you have a question coming to you. Can you please state your name and address for the record, please?
Rob Smith, D.R. Horton. We are the applicant along with the engineer Bear Becker, 8180 Corporate Park Drive, Cincinnati. I really don't disagree with just about anything I heard there. We honestly don't really like the two collector roads as part of this community. We think they're unnecessarily wide. We came into this project kind of late in the game, so I was told really that's kind of baked in. Not much we can do about that. But I really don't disagree. I've driven up and down Wilson Farms Boulevard, and people do speed. And people come up with creative forms of traffic calming. I think it's overcomplicated. I think it's really narrower roads, people go slower. Statistics show that. So we really are opposed to the two collector roads kind of in general. But again, I was told that we can't really do much about that at this time. But we really don't know that the traffic warrants it. I'm not a traffic engineer. I don't work for the county. I don't know what future plans are in adjacent parcels, but I don't think that those wide collector roads are really necessary here, and I do think it just encourages speeding. I don't think people do it intentionally most of the time. Some people probably do. Most people just drive, as this gentleman said, as fast as they feel safe. Most people really don't pay attention to the posted speed limits. They drive as fast as feels safe. And when you're on a 41-foot road, back of curb to back of curb, 41 feet, it feels really wide, and you end up finding yourself going 45 and a 25, as he says. Our non-collector roads in our community are either 28 or 29 feet, I'm not sure, back of curb to back of curb. People generally just drive slower because it's narrower. Sometimes you do have a car parked on the side. That actually has the effect of making people even slow down even more, actually, which isn't the worst thing when you've got children playing in the neighborhood. So as the applicant, I just wanted to support this gentleman and say I really don't disagree with what he's saying. I really don't like the collector roads here, but I'm told it is what it is. So I just wanted to say that. So thank you.
How wide are we requiring the connector road to be in your development?
The collector roads, I believe those are 41 feet curb to curb. And the non-collector roads, the neighborhood streets, are 28 or 29.
And that's the regulation, Stan?
It's on our thoroughfare. The collectors are on your thoroughfare plan.
That shall be the width?
Yeah, the only way around that is if the board votes unanimously to deviate from that. You have the authority to do that. But I would encourage you to continue this hearing in progress and have the county engineer.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. I don't want to.
I'm not gonna make a decision without talking to them, yeah.
Just let you know, they were out this week at board, they would have been here, but.
Yeah, but the other thing is that the collector roads are meant to handle more traffic.
Yeah.
And they're also meant to have access and provide more access to emergency vehicles and things like that. So there's multiple reasons for doing that. I understand the point that's being made here. I mean, we have posted speed limits that are enforceable by law. We expect people to abide by that. In fact, people don't abide by it practically in any street, probably in the entire county. And that's a constant thing that occurs. But we have a trade-off that we have to balance with regard to this. So I appreciate all the comments about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other opponents who wish to speak?
They're not here.
Next, I'll ask you, sir, do you wish to cross-examine any of the witnesses who've provided testimony? Yes. Okay, great. The board will now give the applicant the opportunity to provide any additional testimony and respond to anything you've heard. If you have any additional information or response you'd like to give, it's not mandatory, but we're. Great. For the record, does the applicant have anything else to say? Okay, thank you. So at this time, the applicant must describe on the record every document that you desire the Board of County Commissioners to rely upon to make its decision, and leave a copy of the document with the board to make it part of the official record.
Again, John Delvern with Bear Becker. In addition to the application, the documents that were submitted were the Stage 2 PUD site plan, along with the landscape plan, and I believe house elevations.
Okay. At this time, I'd ask you a series of questions. Did the Board of County Commissioners deny you the opportunity to present your position, arguments, and contentions?
No.
Did the Board of County Commissioners deny you the right to offer and examine witnesses and present evidence in support for the record?
No.
Did the Board of County Commissioners deny you the right to cross-examine witnesses in opposition?
No.
Did the Board of County Commissioners deny you the opportunity to offer evidence to refute evidence or testimony offered in opposition?
No.
Did the Board of County Commissioners refuse or fail to compel any witness's appearance or evidence at your request?
No.
Do you have any objections to the evidence made a part of the record?
No. No objections.
Now, before I close the ask to close the administrative hearing, I would ask the board, is there a desire to continue the hearing in order to hear from the engineer's office?
Well, I have a specific question, because I would have said no until I heard your response to the objector. Because it sounded to me like, so you have to clarify this for me, do you want to, and I know that this would probably be just a cost standpoint for you guys, do you want to narrow your roads, your collector roads, as, or am I misunderstanding that? Because if I understood what was said, you want to agree with the person who had some concerns, and then you said, but, we understand that this is all baked into this, we don't have any choice. But now we find out that, no, that's not really true, that this commission has the power to, by a unanimous vote, to change the width of that collector road. Do you want us to do that? And delay these proceedings, and maybe change completely your plans? Relative to the road width, that's my point. Because if you want us to do that, we'll continue this hearing, we'll bring in the engineer, and we'll get them to testify about that.
Thank you for the question. Again, Rob Smith with D.R. Horton. I guess for the sake of the project, we are very advanced in design. It's not my intention to open everything back up. That's not what I'm asking of you, Commissioner. I don't know your internal proceedings. If it's as simple as keeping the same design, but changing one or both of the collector roads to a local street, yes, we'd be in support of that.
Well, I
If
don't
that
think we
cannot
can make
be
that
done.
determination without hearing from the engineer. I mean, we aren't going to weigh
Right.
in on that, but
Sure.
the engineer may choose in order to, he may say, in order to make that change, some other modifications will be necessary.
Sure. And if they were, I guess that's a valid point. We would have to assess it compared to those other modifications. In a vacuum, if that were the only change, we would be in support of that. We do find from a marketing and a home buyer standpoint, buyers do prefer to live on the narrower streets. So we do think, all things equal, a home buyer, when they're looking at lots, will prefer one of the homes that front onto one of the local streets as opposed to the collector street. So,
Well, what I'm asking for you to tell us today is, do you want us to continue this, to get the engineer to come in, to tell us whether or not we should approve a narrower street on these collector roads? Because if you don't want to do that, I mean, I appreciate the planning that you've gone into with this, the amount of time and effort with your plans, the fact that we previously approved this in this configuration with the road width as it is. And therefore, despite the objections that have been made, which are not really objections, but are concerns that I think are legitimate, and I think you recognize legitimate concerns. But I'm inclined to approve this today with the conditions that you've accepted, unless you want us to continue this and to get an opinion from the engineer.
And at that time, you could actually make the determination if the engineer says, yeah, we can go from 41 to 30 or whatever the number is, and basically the only thing that happens are the lots get 5 feet wider on each side of the road, but everything else stays the same. You can make the determination of, yeah, we're in favor of that. Or at that time, if the engineer comes back and says, well, you know, we've got to do stormwater collection differently, we've got to do this differently, all of those different things, then you can say, no, we're not in favor of that.
I'm putting this on your sword, gentlemen. Sure. From my standpoint, if you want us to do that, we'll do it. You're the applicant, you're the one driving this boat. If you want us to continue this and get that opinion, we'll do that.
I will defer to John Delverne only because John has spoken on the engineering side with them a lot more. If you've had these deep conversations with them and you believe when they do come, you anticipate what they're going to say and it is not worth this time and effort to bring them back, then.
We had conversations in the stage 1 process with the engineers about eliminating some of the collector roads. One of the collector roads didn't exist in 2004, the north-south one. So we did have some conversations. They didn't go very far. It was, no, this is our thoroughfare plan. This is what you need to do. Personally, I think you're talking about county standards, and I don't know how much work would need to be done to change those in 30 days.
What do you want us to do?
What do you want to do?
Well, no, it's not, we wouldn't change the standard for the entire county.
Just for this
Under
PUD.
the law with a PUD, correct, Bruce?
Not a PUD, you can, by statute, you can deviate from the thoroughfare plan with a unanimous vote.
So we're not changing our thoroughfare plan, we can,
I would be open to hearing what they have to say, yes. If if what you're saying can be, if it can be done locally, I'm not asking you to change your whole county standards beyond this
and
project.
we wouldn't do that, yeah.
Sure, sure. Yes, I think there's a case to be made that at least one, if not both of these, ought to be.
Sure, because I just think that it's our due, and again, this is a relevant question that comes up, and
Yes.
it's probably worth having that more extensive discussion with the engineer of, we've heard one side of the argument, which is everyone in the room says that's 100% legitimate. But there's traffic engineers, the actual county engineer might have a completely different take on it for blank, blank, and blank reasons. And we need to hear that, just so even in our own mind, we can understand what the counter argument to that is, because there's obviously some rationale behind, we need collector roads at 41 feet. Okay, what is, and he could come in and say, you're going from Robinsondale down to 123, and there are gonna be roads, and, this is why we have to do it, and the fire trucks are this wide, and things along those paths. But I think that's and again, I think it's probably a fairly quick hearing to allow them to provide the testimony. And again, it would be if the board unanimously thinks this is a good idea in this one particular circumstance, and then that is the only change, and there's not a lot of other things. I don't really, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't see a big downside from your standpoint.
Well,
Yeah.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that from the person who raised the issue, obviously their road's gonna stay the same. I'm not sure that it's gonna affect the speed that's going through their area, it might affect the speed going through your area, which may be an advantage. But again, my point is, if you ask us to do this, we'll do it. I think that the fact that it'll happen could bring other things into play, I don't know, because the hearing's gonna remain open. So we're gonna have to go through this whole thing over again. But again, my point would be, if you want us to do it, we'll do it.
Yes, I think it's worth looking at it, to both of your points, and I appreciate the points that you've raised. I think if we're talking 30 days, this is going to be a project that's built for generations, and it's worth getting it right. And if you concur with what you discover in the next, by your engineers and your staff, that perhaps one or both of these collectors could be taken down, and it's better planning for the future of the community for decades to come, it's probably worth it. So I'd be open to coming back and hearing what they have to say.
Okay, so if I would entertain a motion to continue the hearing in progress until,
April 18th, is that an okay date? That would be 3 weeks.
Tuesday, April the 18th.
That's not good for me.
Okay.
That's not good.
About the week before?
The week before is your state of the county, and you also have a work session that's probably gonna take a lot of your time. You have your
Could we-
follow-up facilities.
I'm sorry, what's the work session?
It is the follow-up on the facilities
Oh, we
master
we
plan.
could move that probably.
So that would be April 11th, and then your area progress council.
Yeah, this could be the only thing we do on the 11th, which is fine.
Okay.
Yes, please, come forward.
Say on the 11th. 11th.
This is a question for Bruce. I just want to make sure that there's nothing in the stage one resolution that would make them have to come back through the rezoning process for this.
If we make the change.
Well, do you have to restart the entire process over again, going back through the regional, the planning commission? And so this is gonna be maybe a 6-month process, not a 30-day process.
The road cross section was approved at PUD stage one, so it probably would be an amendment to PUD stage one, but that's a determination.
Okay, so what kind of a process are we looking at, Bruce, if we have to go back and do this?
If they had to go back to stage one and amend it, they would have to go through that lengthy process. I'm not sure approval of the road section, something I'm not prepared to answer right this second, constitutes something that necessitates amending the stage one.
And if we schedule it, and the answer is yes, they'd have to go back to stage one, we'll ask the applicant again at that time, do you want to continue with this, or do you want us to rule on this now? And then we'll give you that option, because, none of us are trying to send you back and make you go through the entire process. This is a very specific question in my mind on one specific topic inside of here. And if it opens Pandora's box of everything, we'll ask you at that time, do you wish to continue the hearing, or would you like us to close it? Because I feel satisfied at this time. I've heard all the information I need to hear. Bruce, would that be acceptable?
So is there a motion to continue the hearing in progress until Tuesday, April the 11th
At 9 a.m.
at 9 a.m.?
So moved.
And yes.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Great, thank you all. Before we take a motion for executive session, Tina, do you have?
I do. On your list of resolutions for consideration that were not on the consent agenda, there is a recommendation to approve an alternate to the Warren County Rural Zoning Board of Appeals. That would be Rex Jager from Turtle Creek Township.
This is to approve an alternate person who would attend the meetings and vote if there was somebody missing?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we accept that person.
Yes.
And yes?
And that's all that I have.
Okay, so we now have to have a motion to go into executive session for union negotiations relative to the Warren County Sheriff's Office. Do I have to say anything more than that to make the motion?
To
Okay.
121.22G4.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we go into executive session regarding union negotiations relative to Warren County Sheriff's Office pursuant to revised code 121.22G4.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
And Tiff, will we be coming back for action?
I do not know at this point in time.
Okay.